A Daemon world used to be a planet. Somewhere under the storms and the shifting ground, a core of what it was is probably still down there. Old cities, old roads, buried under whatever the warp decided to build on top of them. But the surface, the sky, the way gravity behaves, none of that answers to reality anymore. So let's go through what a Daemon world actually is. How a normal world turns into one, who lives there, and why the Imperium is still losing ground to them after 10,000 years. Most planets sit in real space and stay put. This one doesn't. Mountains rearrange themselves overnight. Oceans turn into something that isn't quite water anymore. The sky presses down close. Like the surface of the warp is only a few feet above your head, because in a lot of these places, it is. Its connection to the Imperium has grown so strong that the ground itself starts running on warp logic instead of physical law. Cults are usually where the corruption begins. A handful of people making promises to something that isn't supposed to exist. Quiet at first, growing over generations. Bad dreams spread through a hive city. Livestock get born wrong. None of it looks like an invasion, right up until it is one. Belief alone rarely finishes the job, though. Most Daemon worlds cross over during a massive surge of warp energy, an expanding eye of terror, a Daemon Primarch's influence, an ancient storm that never passed, or a single ritual violent enough to tear the barrier open for good and never let it close again. For the Chaos Gods, a Daemon world becomes a permanent foothold. It lets the warp project real power into real space without needing a portal or a summoning ritual every single time reinforcements are wanted. Once a planet crosses over, chaos doesn't need to fight its way in anymore. It's already home. The four flavors of hell. There's no single template for what a Daemon world looks like once it's finished. Not everyone serves the same master, and each god reshapes a planet completely differently. The climate, the architecture, even what counts as being alive. Nurgle's worlds don't look ruined. They look alive, overgrown, wet, breathing. The air itself makes you sick just standing in it, and yet nothing there is technically dead. One of his best-known holdings is simply called the Plague Planet, a world so saturated in his gifts that disease stopped being a threat and became the local weather instead. Nothing there dies. It just keeps rotting, forever, without ever finishing. Khorne's worlds are the opposite. Bare rock, iron, blood that never fully dries. Nothing grows, because nothing gets to just exist. Everything either fights, or something else consumes it. Whole populations on Khorne worlds are born, armed, and thrown at each other before they're old enough to understand why. Slaanesh's worlds are the quiet trap, beautiful, seductive, built to keep you there by choice rather than force. Nobody gets dragged onto a Slaanesh world and stays out of fear. They stay because leaving feels like the worst option, and by the time they realize that isn't true, it's already too late to matter. Tzeentch's worlds barely hold still long enough to describe. The architecture in a city can be completely different by the time you walk back through it. Sortierius is the one most people have actually heard of, a fortress world claimed by Ahriman and the Thousand Sons, part library and part prison, holding secrets even its own inhabitants aren't allowed to fully understand. Plans made in the morning don't survive the afternoon, because the god of change doesn't let anything, including his own schemes, stay finished. Chaos Undivided worlds answer to none of them, and all of them at once, the least stable ground in the galaxy. Because four gods keep fighting over the same territory before any one of them finishes shaping it. Sycharis is the clearest example. The Daemon world, claimed by Lorgar and the Word Bearers, built around temples to all four gods at once, rather than a single one. Nothing built there ever gets to stay finished for long. Medrengard, the Iron Warriors, didn't start here. Their real homeworld was Olympia, lost to them centuries ago after a rebellion that ended with most of the population dead. Medrengard is what they took instead, a fortress world under permanent siege, built from iron and shrapnel storms, where construction and combat have run side by side for 10,000 years, because the Legion never learned how to stop doing either. People live inside that. Someone was born in those storms, and has never once seen a sky that wasn't tearing itself apart. Entire generations have grown up learning siege warfare the way other children learn to read. Because on Medrengard, that skill decides whether you eat this week. Daemon worlds cluster inside the Eye of Terror, a permanent tear in reality, where the warp doesn't bother staying separate from real space. Countless worlds inside it have gone the way Medrengard did. Nobody keeps an exact count. And honestly, nobody's volunteering to go count them. It isn't the only region like this, either. Further across the galaxy sits the Screaming Vortex, a smaller, but no less dangerous rift packed with its own collection of daemon worlds, warlords, and things that used to be human before they made a bad decision in a temple somewhere. If the Eye is the Imperium's oldest wound, the Vortex is the one nobody outside a few sectors even talks about. Some daemon worlds don't answer to a god directly at all. They answer to a daemon prince immortal, who climbed high enough in Chaos's favor to stop being mortal, and got handed a planet as payment for services rendered. Physics doesn't apply here. Time, on a daemon world, doesn't run at one speed. A single day on the surface can pass, while centuries go by for anyone watching from orbit, or the reverse happens, and an army marches for what feels like 100 years, then comes home, having aged a single afternoon. Gravity follows next, and it isn't fixed either. Rivers run uphill in places that have no business having rivers at all. Buildings lean at angles that shouldn't hold weight, and somehow do anyway. Space bends around whatever's next. Seasons can cycle in minutes instead of months, and the geography a scout mapped yesterday might not exist in the same shape today. Cartographers who chart these worlds for the Imperium know their maps go stale the moment they're drawn, and at the far end of it, even death stops meaning what it's supposed to. Depending which god claims the territory, the dead don't always stay quiet, and a body isn't always a guarantee that whoever it belonged to is actually gone. None of that is decoration. It's the clearest evidence a world has left real space behind for good, even when the people living on it call it home and walk across it every day like it's ordinary Earth. Guardsmen who fought on daemon worlds describe the disorientation as worse than the fighting itself, a battle you can survive with training. A sky that keeps rewriting its own rules is something training doesn't prepare you for. Wakes up one morning to find their planet has already crossed over. Long before a world fully turns, there are warning signs an Inquisitor knows to watch for Vox transmissions that arrive garbled with sounds nobody can explain. Weather patterns that stop matching any recorded model, and settlements that report the same nightmare on the same night without ever having spoken to each other. By the time an exterminatus order gets signed, the Imperium is usually already too late to save the population, and everyone involved in signing it knows that going in, most flagged worlds finish turning before a response fleet even arrives in system. Not everyone here is a monster. Some of the population are cultists who chose this life with open eyes. Some are Chaos Space Marines defending territory they've held since before the Imperium had names for half its own worlds, but a large share of them are just descendants, people born generations after the planet turned, who never knew anything else, and never will. A kid raised on a daemon world doesn't think the sky is wrong. It's the only sky they've ever had. They learn which patches of ground are safe to walk on the way other children learn which streets are safe to cross. Families pass down survival instructions instead of trades, which direction the storms roll in from, which shrines to avoid, which sounds mean you have 30 seconds to run. Whole communities end up isolated this way, staying close because the ground beyond their own settlement has never been mapped safely. Normal is whatever you're handed at birth, not what you'd pick if anyone bothered giving you the choice. Why the Imperium can't just burn them down? Orbital bombardment sounds like the obvious answer. Flatten the surface, move on. It rarely works, because the link to the warp is spiritual as much as physical, and turning rock into slag doesn't sever a spiritual connection. A handful of tools can actually do it. Grey Knights have severed links like this before, using rites built specifically to fight the warp on its own terms. Necron pylons, ancient constructs designed to suppress the warp itself, have managed it too, even though that was never their original purpose. Relics like the Blackstone fragments carry that same suppressive power. But these are rare weapons, in rare hands, spent on rare occasions most of the time. Nobody's coming with one, so most Daemon worlds just get quarantined. Marked, avoided, occasionally raided when a Black Crusade spills out of one and threatens territory that's still real. A Black Crusade is what happens when a Daemon world stops being contained and starts being a launchpad. Fleets gather, warbands that have been fighting each other for centuries suddenly point in the same direction, and an entire sector on the far side of the border finds out its border wasn't as solid as it thought. The Imperium throws everything it has at stopping one, usually wins, and calls that a victory too, even though the Daemon world it came from is still sitting there afterward, unchanged, waiting for the next one. 10,000 years in, calling containment a victory is really an admission. Nobody's found a way to close these worlds for good. They've only found ways to slow the spread down to something the Imperium can watch instead of chase. The truth under all of it, every Daemon world used to be somebody's home before it became a warning stamped on an imperial star chart. Millions once called that ground normal. Families raised children there. Whole cities stood on land that now belongs to something else entirely, and nobody who built those cities ever imagined what their descendants would be born into instead. And people are still there, teaching their kids the rules that keep them alive one more day, the same way parents anywhere teach a child to look both ways before crossing a road. Whatever that planet turned into, someone down there wakes up, eats, and tells a story to somebody they care about at night, because that instinct doesn't disappear just because the world around it did. A Daemon can rewrite gravity, time, and the color of the sky. It has never once managed to rewrite the part of a person that wants to come home to someone at the end of the day. A Daemon world doesn't need to convert everyone to survive. It just needs enough people to stop asking whether the sky used to look different.